I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to USAWatchdog.com. With us, a regular guest on here, fantastic guest. People love it when he is on. He is the publisher of the Trends Journal. It is Gerald Celente. Gerald Celente, thank you for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
Oh, Mr. Hunter, it's always great being on with you, and thank you for all that you do, all the great guests you bring on, and how you open up so many people's minds to so much information.
Well, you're one of the great guests that we have on. You're a favorite here, and I want to start with this FBI Comey. I mean, you have to be living under a rock not to see this. I mean, he lays out this case and trashes Hillary Clinton that she did send and receive emails, confident, classified, top secret emails. She had multiple servers, not one. She basically laid out the definition of gross negligence, which you don't have to have intent. And yet he says, oh yeah, we're not no reasonable whatever prosecutor would ever indict. What's up with going on with Comey not indicting Hillary Clinton? I mean, she basically broke at least 6 laws.
It's bigger than Clinton. It's a trend, and anybody could see it if they open their minds and add up the facts. What we have now is a neo-feudal society. It's all connected. It's global-nomic, as we call it. So, for example, since Obama became president, and these are the facts, 95% of the wealth since 2009 has gone to the 1%. Now let's take a trip around the world. 62 people have more dough than half the world's population combined. Let's come back to the States. 400 people are worth about $2.5 trillion. What I'm saying is the word justice is being misspelled. It's J-U-S-T-U-S, just us. So in a neo-feudal society, and that's why I'm talking about the wage gaps, right now it's worse than it's ever been in the United States history, worse than it was during the Gilded Age. You have separate laws for the political nobility and the economic elite. Let's go back to Obama, the greatest liar, traitor that America has ever known. George Bush was a war criminal for lying us into wars. As I see it, again, only just to make it clear, I'm not pro or anti-Republican or Democrat. I'm a political atheist. I don't like the Bloods and the Crips, murderers and thieves. So going back to Obama, the liar in chief, go back, Greg, to his campaign in 2008, how he promised to bring those Wall Street criminals to justice, right? 6 banks, 6 convicted of felonies, not charged, convicted. See any heads roll? No. Eric Holder, you remember him? Yeah, the Attorney General. Hold this, Eric. He went back to work with one of the white shoe boy firms over there on Wall Street that protect these criminals. And as for Lynch, oh yeah, she was the one that after these 6 banks were convicted for rigging the LIBOR rates, again, these are felonies, not charges, rigging the interest rates, rigging the Forex markets, the currency markets, which are traded at $5.3 trillion a day, she gives them a slap on the wrist, a fine. So what we have is a neo-feudal society. You don't see war criminals being brought up on charges. Look at Obama. He's against the Geneva Conventions and international law with sending drones into nations we're not at war with and killing innocent people. But I'm going to tell you, Mr. Hunter, when they pull you over for not having one of your lights out, a brake light in the back or something, or you didn't put your signal light on, where did you come from? How many drinks did you have? You have anything to drink? Well, I had one. Get out of the car. Put your hands on the roof. And under Obama, now the clown that used to be the mouthpiece over there that just retired, that when they went to the Supreme Court, when you get arrested, Mr. Hunter, now they could stick their fingers up, you know what, when you go to jail to look for anything that they want. It's a neo-feudal society. When you rape the people of their money and their rights, you got to keep them in check because the elite have to be taken care of. Hands off them. If you or I committed any minor crime, you would hear a clown like that FBI cat saying, Mr. Hunter or Mr. Celente has to live by the letter of the law. But when you're a member of the White Shoe Boy Club, you get a free ride, a free pass. Collect your $200 and go pass go. You got a get out of jail free card.
He actually, I got to tell you, at the end of the press conference, which I think is bizarre, and I'm going to paraphrase, he actually warned people, don't try what Hillary Clinton just did. You won't get the same treatment. He basically said, she's above the law, and you can't do what she did. He basically said that at the end of this bizarro news conference where everybody thought, wow, he's going to indict her. He's going to recommend charges. And at the end, he's like, yeah, well, no reasonable prosecutor would do. What?
Again,
so
they'll
she
bust our,
go ahead.
They'll bust our chops for the minor violations, forcing us, we the little people, to live to the letter of the law. It's a neo-feudal society. It's as clear as can be. It's a different set of rules. And again, remember Bill Clinton met with Loretta Lynch. We were talking about the Attorney General. We were talking about our grandchildren. What am I, 6 years old? No, I must be a prostitute for CNBC, CBS, ABC, or FU, whatever channel you want to call it, that buys this crap, pumps it out, and just like the government and the agencies give their criminals a free ride, the prostitutes give the politicians and the economic elite not only the free ride, but the platform to sell their lives from.
Well, we didn't even get into the bribery charges. We lost a big chunk of our uranium business to the Russians here in the United States. Her charity, the Clinton Foundation, became one of the biggest charity frauds in the history of the world. Charles Artel says that. She played this obvious play at the Clinton Foundation, accepting bribery, which is treason, isn't it, when you're Secretary of State?
Again, you're being rational and you're looking at the law. It's a neo-feudal society. Period, paragraph. You have, look, I didn't make up these numbers when I said 95% of the wealth went to the 1%. So what you have is that's what they keep you in check by putting the people down and giving the people that are in charge a free ride. So that's what's going on. You're using common sense. It does not count. Again, they're misspelling the word. It's J-U-S-T-U-S. Just us. We're the only ones that have to live by the letter of the law.
Well, let's move on to the banks, because I know you do a lot of geopolitical and also financial. You're very good on finance. You predicted the '08 bust. You predicted that. And listen, for anybody that out there says, well, he never gets anything right, you got a newsletter. It's documented in your newsletter, date, stamp, time, year, date, month, everything. You document all your stuff. You've made many correct predictions. And I want to talk about the banks. You're following the bank. Deutsche Bank just on this sled ride down, eerily like Lehman Brothers. Gundlach just out. I talked about this in my weekly news wrap-up. Jeff Gundlach manages $100 billion. He says, well, when Deutsche Bank hits single digits, $8-9 a share, people are going to start to panic. What about all the banking troubles going on? And let's start with Deutsche Bank and Credit Suisse and the Italian banks. I know you know all about this. How close are we to a banking calamity?
They've already collapsed. I mean, what are you looking at Deutsche Bank now? What's it, $11 a share or something? It's way down. And look at the IMF report that just came out last Thursday, where they warned that Deutsche Bank poses a global financial risk. And as you mentioned, Credit Suisse and Societe Generale right behind that. As to the Italian banks, Monte dei Paschi and all the others, they're burdened down with heavy debt loads and loads of bad loans. Again, what you have is a crisis like we've never seen in our lives, because it also builds into this whole bubble. Again, I call things wrong. I would have believed the economy would have collapsed in 2012. I had no idea they would keep negative interest rates going, and I never dreamt of QE3. They never did this before. So you can only go by what used to be. So going back to the banking crisis, let's put this into perspective. Mr. Hunter, you're a nice guy, and I like you a lot. I have about $11 trillion worth of government bonds that we sell for negative yields, we call it. So with these negative yields, Mr. Hunter, when you cash them in 10 years, you're going to get less than what you loaned me to buy the bond. That's because I like you so much. So the banks can't make any money with negative yields. The banks also, when you had this big boom happen, loaned out all this money with merger and acquisition activity, for example, in 2015, being at an all-time high, going back to the levels of the pre-panic of '08 days. So now they have all this debt. You have a collapse of commodity prices because let's put the whole thing together now. Go back to QE2 I was mentioning and zero interest rate policy. And by the way, this is a war against we the little people once again in the neo-feudal society. Negative and zero and low interest rate policy only helps the gamblers on Wall Street with their carry trade. They borrow money for nothing. They buy companies, hedge funds benefit from it, and stock buybacks. Those are facts. What does it mean? We, the little people, have no place to put our money. Once upon a time, when I was a young man, they had a thing called interest rates and savings accounts in banks. Even things called CDs. That's right. No, not the ones that you play that are now antiquated, certificates of deposit. And you got a great interest rate on those. And people actually used to retire to Florida on their pensions and interest rates. Those days are gone, going back to the neo-feudal society, putting all the pieces together. All this has done is helped the very rich. Now, going back to why the banks are in a crisis. When all this hot money flowed out of the United States into the emerging markets, when commodity prices were very high, they borrowed tons of US dollars. So whether it's Ghana, Nigeria, Congo, South Africa, Chile, Venezuela, Brazil, all of these countries borrowed, emerging markets borrowed all this, quote, hot money, cheap dough, flying out of the United States thanks to helicopter Ben Bernanke. Now, commodity prices are sinking. We've seen what's happened, for example, just look at oil. Back in 2014 at this time, a barrel of oil was going for roughly $114. Today, it's around 48 to 50. So, you're one of these countries that were rich in commodities, selling them to China, which is now in a slowdown. China takes 40 to 50% of these products. Now, they're taking a lot less because you look at their import numbers, whether it's China, Japan, Korea, South Korea, Taiwan, name the country, imports are way down. Your prices of what you're selling are way down, but guess what? That debt burden that you took on, as your currencies are collapsing along with your commodity prices, you have to pay that money back now with even more of your cheap currency. That's why the banks are in trouble. All of these loans out there that cannot be paid back. And again, going back to the zero and negative interest rate policy, the United States has raised interest rates one time in 10 years, a lousy 25 basis points. Did I get the call wrong that the economy should have collapsed in 2012? Absolutely, because I had no idea that these criminals in the central banks would pull a scam like this. There's never been such a thing as negative interest rates. So the dollar is now going up because of the UK Brexiting stage right. It's going up without them raising interest rates, which means go back to the story about the emerging markets having to pay back their debt in dollars. That's why the Fed is not raising interest rates, because the people can't, the stronger the dollar gets, the less likely it is they're going to pay back the debt, and not only their debt, but our debt. Look at our debt in the United States. It's nearing $20 trillion. So the higher interest rates go, the harder it is to pay back that debt. The central bank has run out of juice, and the banks are feeling the pressure from that.
Well, part of the story was all this fraud. Not only did they have 0% interest rates, not only did they have, all this easy money, and who knows how much money they flooded in the back door with their swaps and all that. But Deutsche Bank, admitted to rigging the gold and silver markets. I mean, the currency markets, the LIBOR interest rate markets. I'm sure the futures are rigged. The commodities, the Chicago Board of Trade. I mean, CME Group. It basically gives out money discounts to central banks. So anyway, how close are we? How close are we to, in your mind, watching this trend, how close are we to having a banking crisis? A, are we going to have a banking crisis? And B, how close are we?
I think the crisis is underway. And what the Brexit was a trigger point for that. And it exposed more of the weakness of what's going on. And again, but the thing is rigged, and you pointed it out. Look, the markets should have gone down much lower. You see what happens. It goes down, several hundred points, and all of a sudden the plunge protection team comes in. Circuit breakers go on. Wait a minute. You're supposed to be in a capitalistic system. No, we're going to rig the markets so our buddies don't lose big. Only the little people will get wiped out. Whether it's in the United States with the plunge protection team, or over there in China with the national team. And I'm not making this stuff up. There should be outrage. Oh, I get it. You go to the casino and you gamble, and the house starts losing, and all of a sudden they change the game. Yeah, because get this right. The house never loses. It's a neo-feudal society. That's what I'm saying. Whether it comes to money or whether it comes to law, they rig the game. There's no such thing as capitalism. By the way, go back to Obamacare. The liberals love to call it, he gave us, health care. Hey, son, could you figure this out? You're buying insurance from a private company, and you're paying a lot of dough for it. You're being forced by the government to buy from a private company. You're being forced by the people that take, quote, campaign contributions, where I come from, bribes and payoffs, to buy from a private company. That's called fascism, the merger of state and corporate powers. And that's what we're seeing, whether it's too big to fail, which is anathema to capitalism, Obamacare, or any other of the schemes going on that puts the government in control as a front for Wall Street and the financial interests.
So do you think that we get this panic of 2016, which you've put in your newsletter, and again, another correct prediction? And
that was the cover right here.
And it's documented. There you go. And what was that? Was that in January or something?
Top trend for 2016.
Okay. So there's when was that put out? January of 16?
Actually, this came out in January of 16, but we made the forecast list in December of 2015.
Okay. So how are we doing on the panic of 16? It looks like we're just about ready for somebody to yell fire in the crowded theater of all the markets, bonds and stocks. Jeffrey Gundlach saying that when Deutsche Bank hits single digits, people are going to panic. Wow, he sounds like you. How close are we to the panic of 2016?
It's at the doorstep. It's ready to go. Look at gold prices. Look how they've been going up. You know, they're up about 25%, you know, or 28% year to date. And why would any, and again, I don't give financial advice. You know, I've been talking about gold
Yep.
on your show. I don't, for how long? I just went over the whole scheme of negative interest rates. So I ask people, would you buy a bond that you know you're going to get less back than what you paid for it in 10 years? Or do you think gold prices will be higher in 10 years than they are now? That's why you're seeing gold as the safe haven. When is the crash going to happen? To me, it's tumbling down now. You don't have that expression, the fish rots from the head down?
Yep.
Take a look at what's going on in retail. Whether it's Tiffany, whether it's De Beers, name the top companies, Gucci, Prada. Every one of them, their sales are down. De Beers' sales were down 72% in 2015. And by the way, I was a keynote speaker in South Africa for De Beers. I have a pretty good, you know, understanding of what goes on to the level that happens at the top. So you're looking at the top of retail collapsing. Go back, look at diamond sales, jewelry sales. Look at the high end of apartment sales. They're down about 20%. Look at Picasso sales. They can't get what they want. Go back to the diamond. They just brought, what, the second biggest diamond ever, and put it up for auction. It didn't meet the selling price. Look at the banks. Follow the money. Again, follow the money. And you're seeing the top is in trouble. So when the top collapses, everything goes down with it in this kind of system. So I believe the crash is already happening.
You know, the gold, I just wanted to say this, you know, we find out that Deutsche Bank's rigging the gold market, right? So they're a primary dealer of treasuries. And they finger, these other people don't admit it, but HSBC and Bank of Nova Scotia, I can't believe anybody else wasn't involved, but those are also primary dealers of treasuries. So the debt exploded. And the advice everybody on my channel, including you, were giving was you need some gold, you need some, you know, you need some silver, you need some precious metal. They were rigging both gold and silver. They admitted they settled a criminal case for this. So why is it going up now? Are they done with their? Can they no longer manipulate this like they could? Are they being swamped by the long buyers, by the big money? Is that what's happening now? That's why gold and silver is going up.
Yeah, they're going to do everything they can to drive it down, because none of the currencies are worth the digital paper that they're not printed on. And so what they're going to do is try to manipulate it. Again, I don't give financial advice, but I'll tell you our forecasts. Our forecast is that at the next downturn of gold, and it could happen any day, that to us is the buying opportunity. On the longer end of what we're forecasting, and have been now for several months, almost a year, we've been saying that gold is going to go over $1,400 an ounce. When it goes over $1,400 an ounce, we believe it's going to spike toward $2,000. There's nothing there to hold up the markets. Having said all of this, when all else fails, they take you to war. You want to get the people's mind off of panic? How about a terror strike, false flag or real? Go back to 9/11, Greg. Go back to George W. Bush's popularity rating. He just gets into office in February of 2001. Now, this is just several months later. His popularity is going below 50%. Just got into office. We're in a recession. The dot-com bubble had just burst in March of 2000. 9/11 happens. You think anybody cared about the economy anymore? And that's when the big scam happened. Alan Green's scam gave us interest rates at 46-year lows and built the bubble. So now let's go to now. You have the commander-in-chief over here, whose popularity rating, he lied his way into office, now he's lying his way back out. If something happens, people will look at him as they did when he got elected. He was going to be the salvation, the Messiah. He'll get away with anything. So what I'm saying is that people can, all they want, to forecast as we do what things, where they're going and what's going to happen. But as I always say it, nobody can predict the future. There are the wild cards. If a wild card is dealt, it'll change the game. Look what happened with the Brexit vote. We've been writing about this, as it was going on before it happened. In our trend alert on June 15th, 8 days before the vote, it was 47 to leave, 40 to stay. That woman, the MP, was killed, Joe Cox, and the guy allegedly yells out, Britain first. Boom, the polls changed. And they won, 52-48. But what I'm saying is you never know the wild card. So to us, when all else fails, they take you to war. And that's something to look at.
And how do you think we get a collapse before we get war? Do you think we get war before we get a collapse? What do you think? Do you think we'll get the war before the collapse? And with George Bush, if you follow that line of thinking, it had already collapsed, and boom, we went into Iraq.
Yeah, we went into Afghanistan, then in Iraq, the war on terror.
Yep.
Again, everybody's mind got off the terrible economy we're going through before that happened. I think it will happen after. I think that there's no stopping this collapse that's going on. What are the central banks going to do? Here again, this was the cover of the Current Trends Journal. You see the bomb over there. Central bankers build economic time bomb. There's no way they can get out of it. Look what's going on in Japan. They have, after years of Abenomics, all their quantitative easing, after negative interest rates, they're still back into recessionary territory. Look what's going on over there in the EU. And, negative interest rates. Oh, and this is another important thing. People could blame the Brexit, for the problems going on in the UK. But if you look at the facts, Greg, the UK was teetering on recession long before this happened. Go back to the last quarter of 2016. What was it? The GDP up, like 0.6% or thereabouts.
Yep.
Look at the last quarter. What is it up? 0.4% or something? So they were teetering on recession. And again, after the Bank of England has done everything they can to juice the markets. So the central banks have failed. Go back again to Europe. Quantitative easing, stimulus, they're buying corporate bonds. Again, the merger of state and corporate powers at a tune of corporate and government bonds at 80 billion euros a month.
Yeah, what could go wrong?
And they can't bail it out. That's what I'm saying. There's no way out. So I believe the crash is underway.
And just as the lead pipes in, you don't know when it's going to pick up enough steam where everybody goes, "Oh my gosh, we're crashing." I mean, you're a forerunner, so you're seeing this crash starting now. You're starting to see it go downhill. There's no way. The rope's broken and it's on its way down, and there's no other catching it. But when do you think that people will finally realize, "Oh my gosh, we are in a crash"? How fast do you think that thing picks up?
It won't happen until the equity markets unravel, because that is the barometer that everyone loves to use. It's always bigger than that, but that's the signal. Whether it's the panic of 08, the 1987 stock market crash, or the crash of 1929. So the markets, the equity markets are the signal. Look at where bank stocks are. Look at the banking index, how low it is. And people aren't calling it a problem. When you follow the money, you can see where it is. Look at the bear markets in Japan and other places around the world. So again, you need the Dow to really go under before people will call it a crash, as we see it.
Okay. And this isn't a maybe. This is a lead pipe cinch crash. Just a matter of when. There's no stopping it.
No stopping it. There's no stop. They cannot stop it. Look, there's too much supply and not enough demand. The reason you don't have the demand is that people are not earning the money to buy the stuff. So look what's going on in Venezuela. The place is in chaos. Look what's going on in Brazil. These are big countries. Look what's going on in the United States. Look what's going on in Russia. Look what's going on with the downgrading of debt in Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, United Arab Emirates. They're floating bonds now because they don't have enough. Saudi Arabia needs oil at $100 a barrel to break even. So what are they doing? They're killing people over in Yemen, starting more wars. Again, get the people's minds off their hometown problems. By the way, which the United States is supporting. Oh, and all those liberals out there, Obama's sold more weaponry than any post-Cold War president.
That's the war card, and it's coming. Gerald Celente, the publisher of the Trends Journal, will put links on to the homepage and all that. Gerald Celente, thank you for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
Mr. Hunter, thank you for having me on. Always great being on with you. And again, thank you for all that you do.